Hello, everybody out there in the LinkedIn universe, and Gung Hei Fat Choi from ESF in Hong Kong. This is Canal and Charles. We have just finished an all-staff conference at ESF for the first time in the history of ESF with 22 schools. We've had all of our staff together. More than 2,700 staff, almost 3,000 staff in the room today. We've had a day-long session of student presentations. We've had panel presentations. We've had keynote speakers who've come in and talked. We've heard from our CEO. It's just been an absolutely incredible, amazing vibe that we've had today. Really quite an extraordinary event. Kunal, just off the top of your head, how was today for you?
Today encaptured everything that ESF is. Even though it was a staff event, I think it reflected our values to all our stakeholders, and our dedication to our vision, mission, and cause. And I think one thing that really resonated with me was how authentic the sort of feeling is towards ESF, even from those who have left ESF 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago even. We had a speaker who was talking about how ESF has impacted them so much. Just, one instance of kindness from a teacher has impacted their entire career and basically their life trajectory. So it was pretty amazing to just see that impact really resonate across the entire staffing cohort.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. That's definitely been a theme of the day, is the impact that the staff at ESF have on students. And so it was amazing how many people have come back full circle round into the organization and talked about those experiences, like you say, Canal. So we started off the day with the Glenealy School Raptors. So I don't know if people can see this, but later on we'll put this on LinkedIn so people can have a shot at it. But the Glenealy School Raptors are a little bit famous, and they did a special rapping song today, which was really something else. And so watch out for this on LinkedIn, because that was really quite an incredible experience. We then heard from the primary school choir, and we also heard from some orchestra, and we had an ESF band that played throughout the day as we welcomed speakers onto the stage. Now, Canal, I know you've been religiously taking notes today. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what were some of the insights and the thoughts that you took away from today's keynote speakers and panel discussions?
Well, I think first I'll start with it was actually quite nice in terms of the way the event was structured, to be honest with you. I kind of felt like it was a real journey. I think what was great to see was how there was a real focus on engagement and well-being throughout the course of the entire conference. Those were the big two themes that I took away. We had panels that came on and spoke at length about engagement, and it was great to see at the start about how great we're doing on the engagement front in terms of some of the work we've been doing with LinkedIn. Look, we launched a huge pilot program with our support staff. And with the 300 that we launched it with, it was unbelievable to hear Carmen talk about the level of engagement in learning. 11 and a half hours of engagement per week from each of our staff members during the summer holidays is just incredible to see that. And it just shows that the value of continuous learning is really embedded, not just in terms of our teachers and our students, but it's really embedded at the core of our staff, our support staff as well. And again, shows how that sort of culture is really embedded into the ESF philosophy and the way people feel about ESF and where they want their career trajectory to go and what they want to learn and pick up. So really felt that was something that really came out and stood out. It was great to hear from a lot of alumni talking about how they're able to spot an ESFer by the way they behave. And yes. I tell you what, Charles, I can probably say I could spot an ESFer in terms of our staff as well from the way they behave. and the way they come across, and their motivations and how they resonate with our culture. Those are all of the things that you can pick out, and that's what you really want. You want that stamp of authority that this is the way we operate as an organization, and that's what really resonates with us, and that's our vision, mission, and culture. And it was really clear, precise. So that, to me, that continuous learning element was just awesome, and to see it really play out during the launch was amazing. And then the final speaker was just absolutely fantastic. I mean, for me, one of the biggest learns from him was how behavior and culture are cyclical, because your behavior impacts culture and the culture impacts behavior thereafter. And so, when there's a sort of break in that cycle, and if there's an issue in that cycle, the whole thing can come apart. And he spoke about the New Zealand All Black team, which was amazing to hear about how, simple thing like a player cleaning up a locker room, and just one player doing it on their own had actually destroyed the entire culture of the team and resulted to poor performance. So just the impact of small actions and behaviors is just so powerful to culture, and just the way that came across during this entire event, particularly in his last presentation, was just amazing, because I think it resonated so much with what we've been facing in the last 2 to 3 years in terms of how we've looked at culture, how we've looked at behavior, how we've tried to impact it through learning and development, and persist with our message in terms of impacting our employees. I think it's just a fantastic thing to see. So I don't know about you, but I felt like everything we're doing is in the right direction, and this kind of gave us even more of a flavor in terms of what more we can do to push it even more towards where we want to be as an organization. So sorry I kept going on and on. I'm just so excited about all of it. So
yeah, the speaker that Kunal was just talking to, our keynote speaker, was Dr. Adam Fraser. So you can see him here on stage. Dr. Adam Fraser talked about the ripple effect, and how our little behaviors have big impacts, and they talked a lot about organizational culture and the impact of organizational culture. He had us reflecting on what were positive ripples that we sent as leaders, whether or not we're a senior leader in the organization, or whether or not we are an individual contributor in the organization. He talked about the positive and negative ripples that we cascade off based on our behaviors, and that was a really interesting, insightful, refreshing conversation. We talked a lot about so the key themes, I guess, throughout the morning was engagement, belonging, and personalization. Belonging, you've talked about a little bit there, Kunal, but let me just talk a little bit about engagement. And so by traditional metrics, ESF staff are actually highly engaged, and the evidence is definitely there, and it's evidenced by the high employee tenure. By the way, in terms of the number of people in the room, there was more than, in terms of years of ESF experience, there was more than 21,553 years experience. So if that was one person, I actually looked this up over the weekend as I was reflecting on that number. If that was one person, it would go back centuries and centuries and centuries to times when there were changes happening to the way humans were evolving. It was just mind-blowing. But 21,553 years experience was in the room today. So in terms of staff engagement, if we look at traditional metrics that HR might look at, we have a very high employee turnover, so ESF staff tend to stay for a long time. We have high satisfaction rates when we do our various surveys. We have low turnover. Our year-to-date teaching attrition is currently 3.7%, compared to the year before. It was 5% in the year post-pandemic for Hong Kong. And ongoing average of our attrition is usually around 8%, so we're well below that. And our support staff
just to add,
trending lower. Yep.
It is. I actually did the latest calculation for support staff attrition, and we're already seeing the impact. We're already 3 to 4% lower than we were last year. So, that's traditionally been an area we've really, really tried to impact, and we're now seeing the fruits of our labor for it. So I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's great. That's really good to know. And another statistic, and you generated this one several times over the last year to year and a half, and then we got the latest date, I think, is from early January. In the last 18 months, we've had over 700 former staff apply to return to ESF since July 2022. And about 20% of those that have applied to come back are teaching staff who are applying from overseas to return to Hong Kong. And it's really testimony to ESF's strong employee value proposition, but also to the continued attractiveness of Hong Kong as a great place to live. So don't necessarily believe all the media, everybody. But one notion I want to introduce today is a new way for us to look at staff engagement. And that is that staff engagement is about providing leadership and clarity, especially in difficult moments when staff or students might be facing challenges. And it's really about providing leadership, regardless of who you are in the organization, a senior leader, a middle leader, an individual contributor, no matter what your role is. It means being proactive and supportive and providing guidance or care and making those subtle leadership decisions. And it goes beyond a traditional view of staff engagement and really looks deeper into a more meaningful, impactful connection. Now, whether or not we're going to be able to actually measure staff engagement through that leadership lens, that's wait to see this space. I can tell you now, we have trained over almost 350 people in mental health first aid, and that program is actually for the staff. It's not training for the students, although definitely it has a benefit for the students because it attunes the staff to mental health first aid, and we have other programs to support staff or students when it comes to mental health. But the mental health first aid program is really for the staff to support one another, to support their family, their communities, and their friends in their lives. And the use of mental health first aid is a leadership moment. Being able to discern when you want to come along somebody and provide them some support from a mental health first aid perspective is an example of a leadership moment. So watch this space because it's too easy nowadays to be thinking about staff engagement and get into the same old and almost kind of starts to get tiring. But this is an area where we're going to be looking at. And the other thing, which comes back to the initiative that we're doing with LinkedIn Canal, if you want to say a few words about that, is we're really focusing on adding value to staff careers. So the gap that we're now focusing on is really non-traditional. We send out, we do entrance interviews when staff come in for an induction shortly after they start with the organization. We test out how is their first couple of weeks, months in the organization, is it meeting their expectations? But we also do a post-employment survey. So about a year on average after people leave ESF, we send out a further survey to them and we ask them, was your time at ESF of value to you? And this is an area that we're really delving into a lot. We want people to come to ESF, they want their career, we want them to have career growth, but in a way that we can actually say, and they can say, yes, coming to ESF created value for me. And we measure that through the post-employment surveys. And then the other thing is we're also creating careers. So we have just kicked off this year a teacher training program. We've partnered with some external organizations and we're supporting teachers, brand new people who want to become teachers, EAs who aspire to become teachers. But do you want to talk a little bit about what we're doing with the LinkedIn Learning Canal? Because I think that's a really exciting and it's a project, and it's directly how we're addressing creating value for staff.
Yeah, thanks, Charles. I think this project really evolved around how do we provide value, and being a contributor of value is really important. I think it's something you and I both talk about endlessly, about how important it is to be a contributor of value. And instead of just absorbing value from others all the time. So, and that's what we've been thinking about when we think about our staff members and our employees, is how are we contributing value to them? Because contractually they come on board, and that sort of transactional relationship automatically stipulates that that the employee will contribute value to the employer. But the other way around is quite difficult. Compensation is always one part, and we all know that that money is not everything anymore. In fact, I think what's reinforced things more for me more than ever is hearing from multiple sources and multiple experts during the course of this conference about how learning and development is the most important thing to younger generations, and it was just wonderful to hear that, even from a psychological safety and a mental well-being perspective as well. So there's that element. But I think for me, how we designed the sort of reciprocal, we based this whole idea on reciprocal value model, which is you give value and you receive value. And how are we providing reciprocal value to our staff? Well, we want to do it through our competency framework. And essentially what we did was we curated specialized learning paths with various departments and various teams, and with LinkedIn. We have mapped out 30 to 40 competencies across ESF. That is part of our competency framework for our teachers, our generic competency framework, as well as our leadership competency framework. We then took each competencies and created learning paths associated to it, and looked at those learning paths and really thought about how can these competencies provide value externally if a staff member did in fact leave ESF. And the reason we did that was because we know for a fact that the best and most authentic way of communicating your value and vision and mission is through word of mouth, through others. That's what catches on the most. And we felt that this was the most impactful way. And I think very similarly to our last guest speaker, he said that that the most important thing is where your vision and mission and values correlate directly with your behaviors. And we wanted to exhibit that. So what we did was we created these curated learning paths. We then created an opt-in program where we had support staff during the summer, and a little bit prior to the summer as well, opt in to doing LinkedIn Learning. We had over 300 plus participants, and we started seeing that, in fact, there were a lot of them that found the competency frameworks more valuable than just reading it off a sheet, than actually going and doing the courses itself and really understanding why the competencies exist in the first place, and could see the more broader perspective of it. But now we're taking it to the next level, because once you start showing a little bit more dedication to the competencies and you start to become more competent, we've now starting to create a reskilling opportunities for our staff members, whereby they're able to really define in their career conversations with their managers about where they want their careers to go. And we're then able to create target learning plans and learning paths for them to start getting them to where they need to be. So really upskilling them and reskilling them as they need. And that way we incorporate them and grow them in the organization. And that's really the perspective, because essentially they get put into a huge candidate pool of highly rated, skilled workers within the organization who get looked at first. But most importantly, I think for us, it really gives us a real idea in terms of workforce planning, being fully aware of what we have internally within the organization, because we are already starting to skills map these individuals that complete their learning paths on LinkedIn to specific skill sets associated with specific jobs. And we are already able to start to advise very clearly our stakeholders that, hey, you might want to look at sourcing internally for this one and training up, because the cost and time is much reduced. If you have to go out to market to actually attract talent, the time to hire is extensive. And we're able to do that all through a clear, succinct match from a skills framework, a global skills framework, from a talent management framework into a talent acquisition framework. And we're then able to really provide value from this perspective. So again, it's value on two bases. We're creating value for the organization by encouraging to upskill, reskill staff, utilizing the learning paths through LinkedIn Learning. At the same time, we're also advising the organization in terms of what's the fastest way to ensure that you have the resources at schools to reduce the stress on your staff as well. So we're doing a bunch of things and really thinking about workforce optimization from that front, but really taking a learning and development lead from it, because we think that that's what's going to affect our long-term value at in the long run. Sorry.
No, nothing to apologize for. I think it's fantastic. And after Carmen from LinkedIn referenced that partnership that we have with LinkedIn, I already started getting messages from people. I think it was quite funny when she said that we purchased a number of licenses, but we actually have more licenses, and we were able to say that in the room, and people are now starting to ask us to to participate in that. So I think that'll be great, and hopefully we can double or triple the size of that program. So another thing, we heard from our CEO today, and she was talking about her appreciation and gratitude for the people in the room. We also had a lion dance at the very beginning of the event. We kicked off with a lion dance and dotting of the eyes and the mouth and the tail of the lion for the Year of the Snake. But one story that Belinda talked about was, you can kind of see it here in this picture, she talked about buffalo. And she talked about how when a storm comes, quite often people or animals and people may run away from the storm. And yet she gave the example of the buffalo that actually turned towards the storm and walked towards storms. And her message in that was to really encourage staff and people in life in general, but to encourage the staff at ESF that when challenges come up and difficulties come up, is to really walk towards them. And the benefit of all this is, the theory is that the buffalo get through the storm faster because they're actually walking towards it. Whereas if you're running away from a storm, it'll catch up to you anyway, and you're going to get wet and you're going to get caught up in the storm anyway. So that was one story that Belinda Greer told today that really resonated and connected with a lot of people, and made a lot of sense. And I've taken a couple of videos that we will be posting on LinkedIn over the next couple of days. And our event today was hosted by Michael Campion. And he is, this is a picture of Michael. He's a former ESF student. Many of his family taught in ESF. And he is an executive coach and a trainer and a company moderator and leadership speaker and motivational speaker. Here's a picture of Michael on stage today at the ESF event, and they flashed up in the background a student picture of him from either his first year in secondary school, which I believe might have been South Island School, or his last year in primary school. So everybody got a big laugh out of that. So this was another example of how people played a role in the conference today who had previously been involved in ESF, and there was that full circle moment that you talked about, Canal, that really made a difference. Another individual who spoke today on the belonging panel was former Keon from Faust, a former ESF student, and I believe that he went to Shatin College, and he is the founder of Faust, which is now a very well-known, reputable theatrical production that's ongoing in Hong Kong. So lots of amazing things that happened throughout the day, and great messages of inspiration, but we're also very, very practical and well-timed. We managed to stick to the timetable and finished up at 3:30 in the afternoon, and did that all with getting 3,000 people out for 2 breaks and a lunch break and back in on time at the end throughout the day. Had a Tai Chi master who came in and demonstrated Tai Chi, and then was interviewed by Tina Tien, one of our education advisors at ESF Center. So a lot of things that were happening. Any other insights for you, Canal, about what we learned today?
I think just the part on psychological safety and making mistakes, and how that resonated so much with not just our staff but our students, and just the importance of failing quickly, and how it can be quite impactful in a very positive way. In fact, I think it was quite amazing. We spoke about failing more than we spoke about success, and I think that's quite powerful, because it just reframed our perspective on failure as a positive thing. I could certainly say from my own experience, I failed a lot, but to be where you are, I think it you can look back and say, wow, it took a lot of failures and small steps to get here. So I think that reinforcing that message really created a sense of safety across our staff. And I think that certainly resonated with all our stakeholders that were there. So glad to see we're preaching what we're saying we're to do from a management perspective.
Yeah, I absolutely agree wholeheartedly. And psychological safety is critical. A powerful relationship to failure is critical. And it was also encouraging to hear speakers from the outside who were saying, it sounds like and feels like you're getting it right. I think that at ESF, we need to make sure we stop and smell the roses and look after ourselves, and that we don't beat ourselves up. So quite often, sometimes we focus on the gap that's missing, not necessarily the accomplishments that have come along. So it was good to hear the positive things that outside speakers had to say about what we were doing at ESF, but at the same time, we were able to start to identify and crystallize how we'll go to the next level and what we can do to keep growing and being better. One thing that Adam Fraser was saying in his final keynote talk was that human behavior self-excites and is very, very contagious, and how small behaviors lead to big outcomes. So that's a great takeaway and an important takeaway for us all. Very, very committed to the development of ESF staff going forward. So I think
That was definitely a super eventful day, and it was good to just participate instead of actually running an event ourselves, because it really, I have to say, it was nice to just take a step back and just kind of absorb everything. And like I was telling you during lunch, when we looked at how many people stood up in terms of how many people joined during COVID, and it just really made us realize as a team how much we've really put into creating a real positive environment for our staff members, and made me reflect personally about what I need to do with my own team in terms of creating an even more positive environment for them, and how my happiness is definitely my, happiness is contagious, and I probably need to reflect that more. But it's always good to take things away like that in terms of how you can continuously improve. And so yeah, no, it was really good to just kind of take a step back instead of actually running an event, and just kind of participating and seeing what it looked like.
Yep. And it was great to be able to be in there and to receive kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can't pour from an empty cup. It's important to put on your own oxygen mask first. So a little reminder for you there, Canal, look after yourself, then you can look after others.
Absolutely.
The community and look after even the planet. But you can't do that if your own bucket is empty. And
Totally.
so it's easy to say that after 5 days off, thanks to the Lunar New Year. So hopefully it will not be a distant memory in the next few days.
No, I'm sure it won't be. This was an incredibly impactful event, and once again, super proud to be a staff member of this organization, and even more proud to have been a student of this organization. So, when Belinda was saying, "How long have you been here?" and she was asking all the staff members, I felt like staying up for longer than 5 years because I've been here for so long in terms of being here as a student and growing up with this organization. But I can certainly say that it's impacted me, and I can see where the value comes from, and super grateful to even be a part of this event. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of long-term staff members, we did celebrate a staff member in the room who had been at has been at ESF for 45 years. 45.
Incredible.
Absolutely incredible. And we did that by having everybody stand up, and then they called off 5 years at a time and had people sit down. Okay, if you're less than 10 years, sit down. Less than 15 years, sit down. Less than 20 years, sit down. And they got up to 45. There was one person standing. Of course, we knew that there was going to be a person there with 45 years experience with ESF, and we had flowers prepared for her. And she came up on stage, and I think I have a quick picture of that. She came up on stage and received the flowers and was acknowledged for her commitment and extraordinary time to ESF. So no, I don't have that that picture readily available. But either way, her name was May. So really, congratulations to May for pouring 45 years of your life into ESF. We're super, super grateful. So I think that's a wrap, Canal.
Super. Thanks, Charles. And sorry I hogged a lot of the mic time here.
No, not at all. I think it's perfect. So Gung Hei Fat Choi, everybody. And We wish you a happy Year of the Snake from ESF. And as we sign off here, I'm going to give you a shot of the wonderful skyline that the Grand Foyer oversees. So the location was held in the Grand Foyer of the Hong Kong Convention and Exhibition Center. And this is actually where it was in this room that the official handover took place for ESF. Not ESF, what am I talking about? For Hong Kong years ago in 1997. So there you go. There's a view of Hong Kong for you. A little overcast today, but the weather is starting to ease now that we're after Chinese New Year. So good times ahead, and stay tuned. And thanks for joining us for our LinkedIn Live.
Thank you so much. Happy New Year to everyone.
Happy New Year to everybody.
Bye.
Bye.